What's happening, everybody? Bob Wankel here, Anthony Sanfilippo. Welcome to a brand new episode of Crossed Up, and I suspect some of our readers, based on DMs that I received, some Twitter messages that you and I were both on, were probably wondering, are these guys seriously going to stop doing this podcast when the Phillies are making a surge towards the postseason? And the answer is no, we are not stopping. We are here. Some scheduling issues over the past 2 weeks or so have prevented you and I getting together to do this show, but fear not, we will be here down the stretch drive in September and going into what increasingly looks like will be a playoff appearance for the Philadelphia Phillies. Anthony, what's up? How are you? And how are you feeling on this fine Friday after a 4-game sweep of those pathetic Cincinnati Reds?
Phillies are 15 games over 500, Bob. They have the 7th best record in Major League Baseball. And I'm tired of hearing people say, oh, well, they just keep beating the bad teams. Well, don't the 6 teams in front of them keep beating bad teams too? I mean, you don't have the 7th best record in the game out of 30 teams and be just a fluke. Phillies are a legitimate team. They did this all without Bryce Harper. Now you're bringing Bryce Harper back into the mix. This is going to be a really exciting last week of August and a heck of a September. And I think it's going to go a little bit into October as well, and it's just going to be a fun thing to sit here and have important baseball in Philadelphia again for the first time in a decade.
Yeah, I mean, so listen, 8 games under back on May 31st, 15 games over as we talk today, a 23-game surge over 500. Really, most of which, I believe one game was Joe Girardi, but most of which has come since the managerial change. Certainly you can point to that as a spark for this team, and I don't think that anybody would deny that at this point. I want to actually start with something that is sort of not baseball related and touches on what you sort of just alluded to, that September is going to be fun. This team has done a great job in the absence of Bryce Harper. I believe it was Joe Giglio last night pointed out on Twitter after the game. Phillies are 11 games over 500 since Bryce Harper went down. We talked about the need to tread water in his absence. They've done far more than that. They've positioned themselves extremely well going into the final 35 games or so before the postseason. And I wrote something the other night after, I guess it was Tuesday night's game, and I just want to get your reaction to this. I said, I know the Phillies haven't made the playoffs in 11 years. Scars and skepticism build. They're also playing at a 90-win pace, which is currently now a 91-win pace, and hold the second wild card spot. They've won 47 of their last 73 games, which is now 49 of 75. They have a ton of crazy wins and surge into their current position despite a prolonged absence of their best player. I don't follow why a team has to make the postseason before saying, yeah, I'll go out and see them play. If you are the fan who isn't worried about the financial considerations of going to the stadium, just holding out because they need to prove something to you, or they make one too many infield errors for your taste, I don't follow that. It's kind of weird. I think it's kind of weird that right now the Phillies are drawing anywhere between 20 and 24,000 a game. I know it's the Reds. I know that Bryce Harper hasn't been out there, but Jesus, man, like, last time I checked, going back to 1883, the Phillies have made the playoffs like 15 times, and they've won 90 games 13 times. They're on track to do it this season. It's expensive, but go to the stadium if you're one of these people that's like, I need to see a little bit more. I don't trust them because of last year. Like, give me a break. Go out and see them. If you don't have the money to do it, fine. No issue there. Doesn't make you a bad fan if you don't want to go down and spend $20 on parking and add up the list with the family. I get all that. But if you're one of these people that's like, you don't get my money until you make the playoffs, like, come on, dude. Go watch this team. They're worth it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, too, Bob, because their TV ratings are up, right? I mean, their television ratings are pretty good. Pretty darn good right now. And it makes you wonder, are people just staying away because of the cost? Or are these people who you're ripping right now, and deservedly so?
I'm not ripping. I'm just saying, cool.
No, but you are. You're right, because I think they're phony. And I'm going to tell you, this is where I'm getting the point I'm getting to. I think that these people like to bitch just to bitch. I
agree.
Because they're watching the games. They're watching it on television. They're going to sit there and say, well, I'm not going down there because I don't trust them. I'm not bought in, blah, blah, blah. But guess what? They're sitting in front of their televisions every night watching it. That's what I'm.
And there's a clear difference, because I know that I think Russ the other day chimed in as he does often, uninformedly so, and just he throws out his opinion. No, I'm just messing. But people were pushing back. They're like, well, the economy stinks. The prices are obscene. I can't afford it. And if that really is the reality, I think some people use that as an excuse, to be perfectly honest with you. But if that is your reality, then certainly you are not included in this conversation. I mean, I get it. It's not cheap to go down there. But I think a lot of people, maybe it's Twitter that does this to me, but I see so many people that are saying exactly what we're talking about. Like, I'm not bought in, beat somebody that's good. Did you see what they did against the Mets? And it's like, they're like Randy Quaid. They're like Randy Quaid from Major League sitting out in the bleachers, except
I call my son.
They're not even out in the bleachers. You know what I mean? Like, so that's where I kind of go, like, what are you people doing? Like, enjoy something. Enjoy something. If you can't enjoy what this team's done over the last 2+ months, 3 months now, basically, then what are you watching for? What's even the point?
Yeah. No, you're right, Bob. You're right. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, and it actually turns out 32-20 they went without Bryce. 32-20. I'm looking at it now, right? And I think if we go back to the episode we did after he got hurt, and we said if they can just play 500, they'll be okay when he comes back. Okay? So if they were just for fun, if they were 500 right now, okay, if they played 500 ball without Bryce Harper, they would not be in a playoff spot right now, and they would be 2 games out of a wild card. If I would have told you on June the 25th when he broke his thumb that the Phillies, last week of August, Bryce will come back, and they're within 2 games of a wild card spot, would you be happy?
Yeah, I mean, that felt like, especially at the time, a little bit more Phillies, they did just enough. They're not really good, but they're hanging in there. Like, I mean, they've done more than that. And,
that's the point. That's what I'm trying. That's the point I think you're trying to make, and I'm supporting with you here. It's that it's not that they just did it and just hung in there, They've built not only did they did this without their best player, without the MVP of the league. They not only vaulted into a playoff spot, but into the second wild card, have a 4-game lead now on Milwaukee, and they have the tiebreaker on them, so it's technically 5.
Right.
Like, they're well in control of this now. They would have to have an utter collapse in September not be playing in the playoffs.
Could collapse. They have not had the most stellar of Septembers in recent years, but I think if you truly watch, and this I feel like is going to come back and burn me, but if you really have watched this team closely for the last few years, all the signs point to this team being different. I think that we've seen bad losses that in the past have been compounded by letdowns against inferior opponents. What did they do after maybe one of their worst losses of the season on Sunday? They said, okay, no big deal. We have an opportunity this week. And they didn't just win 3 out of 4. They swept. And I mean, I think that's the difference with this team. Like, yes, they are still prone to the occasional meltdown. Yes, there are defensive issues. Certainly we've seen the offense here struggle in recent weeks at times. But they've always been good enough and have had enough resolve to sort of steady and not let things snowball against them. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we see here. And I think we see a much deeper team than we have in years past. It's been so top-heavy. But now they're getting these contributions for guys that maybe you expect it to some extent, but then that you don't expect it to some extent. And that's why they've been able to not only survive without Bryce Harper, but they have thrived without him.
Yeah, and that was the question I asked. I mean, I knew everybody was going to ask Rob Thompson about Nola last night, right? So let the regular guys, the guys who get all the information, let them ask about the common questions. And I said to him, I said, yeah, Schwarber hits the home run last night, but the offense comes from the bottom of the order.
Yeah.
I think 5 of the 7 hits that the team had were Stubbs, Vierling, Zimmer, and Sosa, and they drove in three of the four runs. The Phillies scored.
When a little small ball in there with the Stubbs bunt, I mean,
right, small ball. There was a hit and run on the single that scored. Zimmer slides in the second,
pops up,
and still scores on. But he scores on a single, but that's because it was a hit and run. So again, small ball with players who, at the beginning of the year, you never would have thought these guys would have been your big contributors, right? And they're winning a game for you. Yes, Aaron Nola was the player of the game, and we'll get into Nola in a bit. But you needed – Nola never gets run production, and the run production came from bench guys. And that's the key. That's the difference. This team is so deep that those players are contributing this year.
And I think that this is where, when I say, why haven't people bought into this team the way that I thought they might – again, I tweeted this out, and I know that we've talked numerous times on the show about playoff projections and odds and how they're kind of all just nonsense and more or less a talking point. But this is easy. You have a stud player that goes down. You've had young players, homegrown players no less, step up and make huge contributions for this team. Nick Maton, Alec Bohm figuring it out. Bryson Stott becoming a really, maybe we don't want to say good player yet because the stats for a season don't suggest it, but a player that is certainly ascending, who looks like he has, as I wrote the other night, it. He looks like the guy that in the big spot knows the right things to do. The moment doesn't get too big. It's easy to buy into this. You have Kyle Schwarber out there killing baseballs 450 feet. There's a lot to like here, and you're talking about a team that, again, on May 31st, a 19.4% chance to make the postseason according to Fangraphs, and now, as we talk, are basically at 90%. And they did this for a 2-month stretch without Bryce Harper, who, by the way, won the National League MVP last year. And this team is not the Braves. And I know that they've split, and I know that you and I make it to a point where you talk listen, they can take down Atlanta in the playoffs, and maybe they can, but certainly the Braves have been on another planet now for 3 months. And the Mets are having a magical season. And the Phillies aren't catching these teams. And maybe it has something to do with the fact that the Mets did blow the doors off the Phillies this season. It was disappointing both 2 weekends ago in New York and at Citizens Bank Park. I get that. They're not the Mets. They haven't beat the Mets. And so I can understand where that creates a little bit of skepticism. But, you have to also acknowledge that, they didn't have their best player in that series. And, they are on a 90-plus win pace. They're still good.
In all honesty, they didn't have Schwarber.
Yeah,
either.
and I mean, you're not.
I mean,
so I think that at this point, you can arrive to, and it's kind of ironic what I'm about to say. We haven't done this show in 2 weeks, but I haven't really changed my mind over the last 2 weeks on anything that we've seen. I've said 2 weeks ago that the Phillies aren't as good as the Mets. They are a playoff team. They are worth watching, and that they are exciting. And I don't, I know where you're going. When you get into a playoff series, anything can happen. But I'm going to tell you, I don't think the Phillies are as good as the Mets, but that's okay. That's okay right now. Right now, it's okay. In 2023, I might not be as forgiving. But if you win, listen, Anthony, if this team wins 90+ games and makes the postseason, I would be disappointed if they got rolled once they got there, for sure. But I don't think you could look at this at the beginning of the season and say, hey, they win 91 games and they get bounced in the first round, the season's a failure. I don't think that at all.
No, I think you're right. The reason you might catch me smirking on if you're watching on YouTube, or maybe the reason you just said what you said is I ultimately don't believe in the Mets. Ultimately don't believe in the Mets. Yeah, they're going to finish ahead of the Phillies. They're going to finish with a better record than the Phillies. And they have two of the best pitchers in the game in DeGrom and Scherzer, so that automatically makes them dangerous. I hate their lineup. I really hate their lineup. I don't think they hit. And I think that you're starting to see the cracks come back. The Braves are 2 games out. The Braves are going to pass them. I've been saying it all year. Yeah. The Braves are going to pass them. The Phillies are going to have to beat the Mets in the first round. It's going to be a 3-game series between the Phillies and the Mets, and it's probably going to be Well, I should say probably. It's very likely going to be in New York. And the Phillies are going to have to find a way to win that series, and I think they can. I think they can. As bad as they played against that team this year, I still think with a full roster that they can beat the Mets in a 3-game series.
So we'll talk a little bit about Zack Wheeler. I want to put that on ice for a moment because that's a big if, right? That's a big asterisk. If you don't have Zack Wheeler at full strength or at all in a playoff series, that's probably going to change things a little bit. I think as it pertains to the Mets, there were two things that kind of stand out. Like, I agree. I watch the Mets and I don't go, wow, what a great team. But we did see it over the 2 series, and I will begin by saying, and I think this is sort of a little bit of a loser mentality, but everyone talked about, like, wow, the Phillies are miles behind the Mets when you watch them play those 7 games over the last 2 weekends. And I don't know that that's entirely true. I mean, you know, you have Nola, DeGrom, and Saturday up in Queens, and one team scored a run, the other one didn't. I don't know that that showed that the Mets were miles ahead of the Phillies. And, you know, you look at this past weekend, you know, the Phillies get beat on Friday night with Nola. He wasn't great. Mets, you know, took it to Wheeler. The Phillies didn't capitalize in a favorable pitching matchup in that first game of the doubleheader. But they recover. They win with Falter. And then the Sunday game, you know,
they should have
won the game. And so we should have been talking about a split. We should have been talking about 3-4 probably against the Mets over the 2 series without Harper. And, you know, can you really say, oh, the Mets are so far ahead of the Phillies that if the two were to play in a playoff series, there's no chance? I don't think you can do that. But what does concern me, there are 2 things that concern me when you talk about a 3-game series in New York against the Mets. And one is that, and this is going to piss you off, and I'm saying this because I know it's one of the things you want to talk about. Which Aaron Nola am I getting in a playoff series? Am I getting the one that I thought was unbelievably good in New York, and I thought was totally underwhelming and extraordinarily frustrating against the in that first game against the Mets last week? Am I getting that Aaron Nola? And then the other question I have is, can you hit Bassett? Like, can you hit this fucking guy? Like, because he's not that good. And the Phillies have turned him into, you know, almost like 1C in that rotation. So, like, if you can't hit him in a potential Game 3, then you're not going to beat that team. An F-bomb out of nowhere, by the way. I didn't know I was going to use that.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, I think they can beat him. I do, Bob. And you know, if you want to do Nolan now, I'm ready to go on Aaron.
All right, so let's transition to Aaron Nola, who beat a Double-A Reds team last night and was really good, and you're really excited about it today. No, I mean, listen, I'm baiting you. We've talked a lot about Aaron Nola this season. I would tell you that he's been really good, one of the best pitchers in the National League, but I still have some doubt.
You know, Bob, you sit there and say, yeah, he beat up on the Double-A Reds, and he did. He pitched a great game against a very bad team, okay? But I'm tired. I'm tired of the story, of the narrative that Aaron Nola does not pitch well against good teams. And he only pitches well against bad teams. So here's what I did for you today, Bob. Just for you. This year, Aaron Nola has 25 starts. 15 of them have come against winning teams. 15. Now, he does not have a winning record, okay? But that's more because the team doesn't hit for him.
I agree.
Because when you listen to the numbers, to sit here and say Aaron Nola doesn't pitch well against winning teams is a fallacy. 97 in the third innings. His whip is 1.00. That's pretty damn good.
Pretty damn good.
Pretty damn good, okay? He's only allowed 82 hits, 15 walks in 97 in the third innings. 118 strikeouts in 97 in the third innings. 3.61 ERA. I mean, you should be better than 3-8 with those numbers. Okay? And I dare you to find, other than maybe, again, and DeGrom's only pitched a handful of games, but how many pitchers out there in baseball can put up those numbers against winning teams? And it's not just like a team that's barely over 500. Here are the teams that he's pitched against this year. The Mets, I think 5 times, to be honest with you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay?
Just a quick question. How many of the games that he started did the Phillies win against the Mets?
Oh, none. I don't think it's any. So I mean, he's personally only won 3 games against winning teams. He's only won 9 games all year. I mean, so even against the bad teams, they're not. Yeah, a few more wins, but not even that many. So he faced the Mets 5 times, Milwaukee twice, the Dodgers twice, the Braves 3 times, Seattle, San Diego, St. Louis twice. No, once against St. Louis. I mean, you're not playing teams that are these are all playoff teams, except for maybe Milwaukee. We'll see. But still, I mean, to put those kind of numbers up against those teams, the guy pitches well. He does. He might not get the wins, and I think that's what we get so caught up in. He did. Well, they didn't win. Nola pitched. They didn't win. Didn't beat a good team. But is that Nola, or is that the team in front of him?
I hear you. And listen, I think that what I would say is he is one of the 10 best pitchers in the National League. Like, in my mind, like, I couldn't come up with a list of 9 guys that I'd rather have than Aaron Nola. Maybe the list is even shorter than that. Like, I didn't mentally perform this exercise, but I'm just saying I'm using the number 9 here and him being in the top 10 just as an easy break-even point. When I start to think about what October may look like, I can, in my mind, against the Braves, see the Phillies going down there. And I know that they haven't played particularly well in that stadium, but like I can see a scenario where they emerge from that series with a win. And I can even, and I know you've been talking about it, and it has come to fruition, that this Cardinals team, is playing with some type of pixie dust, like, some magical dust here, and that's happening right now. But I can still see the Phillies going to St. Louis and coming away with a series win. I'm having a hard time visualizing what that looks like at Citi Field. Like, I just don't know how that happens. Like, and this is weird for me to say as a 36-year-old who grew up as a big Phillies fan, who watched all of those Mets collapses, watched the Mets lose a World Series within the past 10 years that they were favored to win. They've always found a way to screw it up. But I just don't know what it looks like. You know what it looks like to me? Like when I visualize Mets-Phillies in a potential playoff series, I see DeGrom destroying the Phillies for 8 innings, and that stupid trumpet song being played in the 9th, and Diaz tightrope walking his way to a save. And I see the Mets hitting 3 straight broken bat flares into the opposite field to score the decisive run. And, like, that's what I see, and everybody comes away frustrated as hell. Like, I just can't reprogram my mind when I visualize that series to get over that, because that's what we've seen pretty much every time the Phillies and Mets have played this season. It's a pitcher's duel, or, like, Wheeler has a disappointing start, and the Mets have 11 hits, 7 of them have, an exit velocity under 64 miles an hour, and they just find a way to win. And, like, you hate their lineup, but I almost find something to be artistic about it. Like, it's not that good of a lineup, I agree, but Jesus, they are good at just piecing together these hits that make you want to rip your hair out. In a way, that's almost more backbreaking than just seeing a guy launch a ball into the cap for a double.
Yeah, you're right about that, Bob, but I think that there's something to, and Spencer Strider said it. I don't know if we had a conversation about this on our show, or I don't think maybe we talked about it at the ballpark, but Spencer Strider said it. And he said, wait till this lineup has to face playoff pitching. In other words, there's another level that we're going to go when we attack you in the playoffs. Like, we may pitch a certain way against you in regular season. We're going to pitch a different way against you in the playoffs. And maybe he's just sour grapes because he lost the game and he said that. But it's not normal for a guy to come out and say that another team's lineup isn't good enough to hit in the playoffs.
Right.
And I just don't think it is. I think he's right. I think that there are times, and that Nola start. I was at that game at Citi Field when Nola DeGrom. I was in there with my son. I took my sons up to the game, and it was a great atmosphere. I give a lot of credit to Steve Cohen, what he's brought to that organization and that atmosphere at Citi Field. It's a lot of fun to be up there, okay? And I hate the horn thing too, but they go absolutely ape shit
I mean,
for it.
it's awesome. It's a thing that if you were a Mets fan, you would be. I mean, you'd be driving to work playing Timmy Trumpet. You'd be fired up right now.
Yeah, but I mean, and again, he's another guy who I think is. We're talking about pixie dust. I think he's pixie dusting his season together. Okay, if not something else that's aiding that season. But
are you suggesting something along the lines of the 2021 Reds, who have had like 4 hitters? I think it was Kransky the other night noted this on air. The first 4 Reds hitters of their 21 lineup have had the 4 biggest decreases in exit velocity this season.
Yeah. Yeah, right. But I can see it happen. Let me throw some more Aaron Nola stuff at you, because you're going to read about this on Crossing Broad. And now this is career stuff. Okay, so because I feel like this narrative has gone on about Aaron Nola for a long time. So I wanted to look at it. I wanted to dive into it, right? And I said, okay, well, let me just take a look at his career and find how many other people do what he does. Is he average? Is he normal? Where does he fall into play? So he's 8 years in his career, right? He's pitched 1,190 innings, and he's got a 1.127 WHIP. Okay, so what I did is I went in, I did my stat head, which is by far the greatest investment I've ever made on Baseball Reference, paying for stat head. It's awesome. And I went into the history of baseball and said how many pitchers have thrown at least 1,175 innings in their first 8 years and had a WHIP of 1.12 or lower. The answer is 51. Aaron Nola is one of 51. And he's on a list there with some big-time historical names, and a lot of them. I mean, Walter Johnson and DeGrom, Kershaw, Marichal, Seaver, Grover Cleveland Alexander, Ferguson Jenkins, Pedro, Christy Mathewson. You're talking Roger Clemens, Don Sutton. I mean, these are big-name players. Then I took it a step further, and I said, okay, let's look at that same statistical thing, 1,175 innings, first 8 years with a WHIP that low. How many of them have averaged 10 strikeouts or more? The answer is 5. Jacob deGrom, Pedro Martinez, Chris Sale, Garrett Cole, Aaron Nola. Which
is interesting because you don't typically think of Aaron Nola as certainly not a power pitcher, but not a guy that is a traditional strikeout pitcher. Even though we've seen games where he
yes, but that's my point. In an era, and we are certainly in an era where it's all about the power pitcher. And not to say Nola doesn't throw hard, because he does throw hard. But it was fun to listen to Garrett Stubbs talk about him last night, talking about how many pitches that he actually has, and that he's a pitcher, man. He pitches. That's the difference between Nola and a lot of pitchers in the game today. He's not just up there throwing smoke. He's up there making hitters guess.
He's a pitcher, not a thrower,
Yeah. And so I love that. I love the fact that you're sitting there and he's like, yo, look, the curveball's on. He says, but it's not just the curveball. He's got 2 different fastballs. He's actually got 2 different curveballs. He's got the changeup. You don't know what you're getting from him. And he called it a video game. He said when he's on like he was last night, it's like watching a video game. You don't know what you're hitting.
Well, I hear those numbers. I agree with you. But get ready to hear a lot of this starting next week.
I know, September. Here we go. September.
August, stats. Right? 37 career starts. He has a 17-9 record. He has a 2.85 ERA. The WHIP is under 1. Opponent's OPS 578. Really good, right? September, October, 33 career starts. He's 9-14. He has a 4.60 ERA. Opponent's OPS jumps up nearly 200 points to 758. He has, for, fair or not, context or not, he has had and has delivered some bad performances down the stretch, especially over the last 2 seasons, where, if he would have pitched better, they may have had a different result in their season. I would say especially 2020. So I would say this is the ultimate two things can be true, and one thing should carry more weight than the other, and that Aaron Nola has been an elite pitcher, and he is one of the best pitchers in baseball, but it's time now. You know, like, you want to say it's fair or not? Like, I don't know. I don't know if it's fair or not, but as we know in sports in 2020, and the way that we talk about sports and the way that we take in sports, fair or not, this is going to be the thing that people talk about. And so he needs to kind of like slay the dragon here this month. And I'm not saying he has to go out and throw 5 consecutive shutouts and have like Cliff Lee 2012 May and June type of run here, but like he does need to go out and throw the ball better in September. Like, we can't be talking about, you know, Phillies went 1-4 in his starts in September and he had a 4.5 ERA. Like, that doesn't work here. So, you know, that's a storyline that I think he has to kind of vanquish.
So he's probably going to get, looks like he's going to get 6 starts in September. I'm not counting, he's going to start next week in Arizona, but that'll still be August, okay? So if you're looking at September, he's probably going to get, assuming they don't rejigger the rotation, at San Francisco, Nationals at home, Atlanta twice, once here, once there, at Chicago, at Houston. Win 4 of those games. I think you win 4 of those easy. Maybe 5.
I like how you play the NFL schedule game, like with baseball. Where
are you losing to the Nationals with Aaron Nola?
No.
Okay, so let's chalk that one up.
The Cubs have actually been pretty good in the second half. Just saying,
they have. But I think that when you get down to it, like that's the end of the season. Like, the Cubs are like, all right, we're getting ready to wrap this thing up. The Phillies are pushing to make the playoffs. I think that's a gimme. Okay, I really do. I think let's split the Atlantis. Right? So that puts them at 3-1. 1 in San Francisco, 1 in Houston.
Yeah,
I think you get at least one of them.
Yeah, I mean,
if Houston, and the other thing with Houston is, if they've got number 1 seed locked up that last week of the season, they may have 0 to play for. So, I mean, there's a lot to this, right? I mean, so I just don't see it. I don't see Aaron Nola collapsing this year. I just don't.
So I want to ask you, as we kind of talk about all this, I mean, we're more than a half hour into this show, and we've only briefly acknowledged one of the bigger stories here. We haven't actually really talked about either of the 2 most important stories with the Phillies right now. One is the return of Bryce Harper, which we'll get to after this. Yeah. Zack Wheeler last night, we find out before the game, forearm tightness, I guess is the wording of it. And so he's going on the IL. Dave Dombrowski meets with some reporters before the game last night. I know you were down there covering it on behalf of Crossing Broad last night, and you were not part of the select secret society of reporters to huddle with Dave Dombrowski before the game. Mm-hmm. But, you know, and I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but I'm just going to leave it at that.
It's Bush League. I mean, I don't, you know, and I hope the Phillies are listening when I say this. It's Bush League. Like, you have one of your most important players, and you announce. It's not like somebody broke this.
Right.
It's not like this was a story that a reporter broke and they had it by themselves and whatever, and they get that exclusive interview. Okay, fine, that's great, good work by that reporter. But the Phillies announced that Zack Wheeler was going on the IL with. And they put it out to all of us on Twitter. And what people don't know is there is a Twitter account that's for the Phillies PR, from the Phillies PR team. It's for the media, and you have to be accepted to follow it, which we are accepted to follow it, right? And so we get a tweet that says Zack Wheeler IR, 15 days. Okay, and this is the same Twitter account that tells us when the coach is going to be available, when the locker room is going to be open, like all those things. Yeah. Okay, so it's the same. So this is an announcement to the media.
Yes. But if you've ever wondered why on Twitter, when you see the same reporters tweet the same things like Machine Gun, that's why.
Yes, that's the reason why. Okay, so they tell us. So you've now made this announcement to the entirety of the media that this injury has happened. You don't say why, but you just put it out. Okay. So we're all sitting there, and we're working at our computers. I got my headphones on, my head down, I'm typing away. I got to get this out there, I look up. Now, the press box is split. For those who don't know, I mean, obviously you know, Bob, but for those that don't know, the press box is split. It's like a V. Okay? So on the left side of the V is where all of the regular big-name guys, Jim Salisbury, Todd Zalecki, Matt Gelb when he's there. Again, not there again last night. Jamie Apodi should know that. Those guys, that's where they all sit, over there. The Inquirer, whether it's Scott Lauber or Alex Coffey, whoever's covering. It was Alex last night. So that's where they sit. And then the rest of us, the other 6 of us who cover the team, we're on the other side of the V. Like on the other, the forgotten side. We're on the other side of the Berlin Wall over there. Okay. Okay, and
sounds a lot like sour grapes.
Well, no, it's fun. I don't mind the seat. I mean, I like it. Actually, consider where we're at. We're more open. We're more spread out. Like, we could take up more room. I actually like it. I'm not complaining about it, but I'm just saying that's where we are.
Hey, listen, Phillies PR, if you're listening to this, if you have to take a credential away, we know who's take away.
But so no, I'm not complaining about my seat. What I'm saying is, though, is that when it's announced that when Dombrowski is now available, okay, why do they only tell the people on the one side of the press box and not come over and tell those of us on the other side? Like, I mean, you've made a public announcement. Don't you want everybody who you've now credentialed to be there, who spend hours in the ballpark, going down there 3 hours before game, 4 hours before game, to talk to your manager, and to be there and to write stories about your team and to communicate with, our traffic is up, 80% now, Bob? Right? So, we've almost doubled our traffic in a year on Crossing Broad. I would venture to say that, our traffic is pretty much on par with almost anybody else who's covering this team. I mean, we're probably still behind Comcast and still behind the Philly.com or whatever, Inquirer.com, but not by much.
Right.
Not by much. I mean, we're right there. Yeah. So that audience is there, and you're not going to tell us? I mean, that to me is that you have to tell everybody. That's all there is to it. When you make a public announcement to the media, you have to let us all know that the general manager is available, and not just 2 or 3 little birdies who you want to feed the information to and let them put it out there. That's not how it works. It's not how it works.
All right, so let the
record... if they want to keep it that way, Bob, if they want to keep it that way, then I'll start digging, right? I mean, that's what I do in hockey, right? If hockey doesn't want to tell me anything, I start digging. So you don't want to you don't want to tell us. Fine.
Let the record show. Let the record show that Anthony is coming for you, Philadelphia Phillies.
I'm just saying. That's how it works.
Well, so this announcement's made, and he is going to miss at least 2 starts, according to Dave Dombrowski. Okay, and so I guess the first question is, to what level of concern should there be? The Phillies over the years have had a knack of saying, like, no big deal, and then things sort of turn into a big deal.
Exactly.
Which, no, that is not necessarily unique to the Phillies, but they have definitely, I think, undersold the significance of certain injury issues. One of the things that got said was that he could have made this start this weekend, but, abundance of caution more or less. We'll see. But if he misses the remainder of, like, let's just say, worst case scenario, misses the remainder of the season, I think that totally changes the math on maybe not so much the Phillies making the postseason. Like, they're in a position now where I think they could probably withstand missing 6 more Zack Wheeler starts. I mean, maybe. But certainly if you talk about a potential playoff series and looking at then, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, and then take your pick of Noah Syndergaard, Kyle Gibson, I don't think that's going to bode too well for this team. So certainly getting him back at some point in September and getting him back at what he should be is going to be key to this team's ability to do anything come October should they get there.
I agree. And that's that there is definitely, you got to, like I said, I think I wrote it yesterday, they were already holding their breath with Sir Anthony Dominguez coming back. Oh, he'll be back September 2nd. It was just precautionary, with his issue. Well, you're already holding your breath there. I mean, how many rosaries are you saying now, with Zack Wheeler in this situation?
Can I just tell you, gut again, and like this is another freezing cold takes potential one here. I'm more concerned about Sir Anthony Dominguez than I am about Zack Wheeler. That's just a gut feel.
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, you're more concerned because he was the solidifying force in that bullpen that made the Phillies make this run.
That Reds team does not hit very well, and I guess even predating back to the New York series, that bullpen, which has been so good since Rob Thompson took over, has been suspect. For about 10 days now. I mean, it's been rough.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of I understand Robertson. After throwing 36 pitches, comes out the next day and he gives up the home run. All right, fine. I mean, look, you put a lot on the guy. I get it, and that happens. Brogdon was the disappointment to me. I mean, he was the disappointment against the Mets. He was the disappointment against the Reds. He's the one that I'm like, all right, dude, you got to be better. I expect more out of Connor Brogdon. I'm a big Connor Brogdon guy. Have been for a while. I expect more out of him, and he hasn't. In the last couple times out, hasn't provided it. Those guys need to be better, because if Dominguez is not Dominguez when he comes back, that's a whole different world out there. Innings 6, 7, 8, 9, like it really is, and you would need guys like Nola and Wheeler and Suarez to give you 7 almost every game, if not more. There's some concern to be had, but if the Phillies are not blowing smoke, and these are just precautionary, and these guys can come back and pitch effectively and to their ability, then great. Then everything's looking rosy. But if not, you're right, 100%. It changes the complete dynamic of this team and its arc for this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So on a more positive injury front, certainly you're going to get the return of Bryce Harper, and I guess I'm trying to think of a few things. And it's funny, I think I've said this before, but everyone talks about here comes Bryce Harper, and the first thing everybody wants to talk about is lineup construction. For a baseball guy, for a guy that coaches baseball at high school level, there's no conversation that bores me more than lineup construction. People always talk, it's a thing that people are fascinated by. Writers love to talk about it. Radio people love to talk about it. And I get why it's important. Certainly I understand listen, the way that you stack them up, the way that you're attacking opponents, I get it. I just don't care. So everyone's like, well, how's the lineup going to look? I do think that there are two different things to talk about here, though. And one is that Bryce Harper is going to hit third. He wants to hit third. We know he's going to hit third. But we've talked in the past about Kyle Schwarber. Listen, the whole idea with Schwarber, he has the power, and I've always said, I don't really care if he's going to hit leadoff, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. And now that you're having more power injected back into the middle of your order, you can probably live with Kyle Schwarber at the top, but the thing for me is he's not getting on base enough. The idea is that he's supposed to be a guy that will draw walks and then hit for power, but he's just not getting on base enough, and he's been a little bit cold right now, that bomb last night, notwithstanding. So I do think that maybe this team needs to shuffle this thing around a little bit, and I do wonder what they do with Bryson Stott, who's been so good now for the last 30 games or so especially, and Alec Boehm, who's been really good dating back to the start of July. And I know he went through a little bit of a cold spell here in August for a while, but still, you look at the overall picture, and he's been one of your better hitters for a pretty prolonged stretch at this point. So, I know you're a little bit more of a lineup guy. Do you have, a lineup take with Bryce Harper coming back here?
Well, yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think Bryce Harper is your best leadoff hitter, in all honesty. I mean, if with this lineup, they don't have a true leadoff guy. So I would run it, if that's the case. You don't have a true leadoff guy, I want my best player batting more than everybody else.
Right.
So to me, I would bat Harper. But if Harper's, he wants to hit third, he's the LeBron James of the Phillies, and that's what he's going to hit, okay, fine. Then Bryce Harper's going to hit third, then you have to work around that, okay? So how do you work around it? I think Schwarber was fine for a while, and I was okay with it. But like you said, he's just not getting on base. Plus, if his production value for you right now is home run or bust, why do you want him leading off? He's got 22 solo home runs this year out of 35. That's pretty crazy.
Right.
And I think that I put in a tweet yesterday. I forget where it was, but he's only had one home run of more than that's not a solo home run since June 30th, I believe. I think, June 30th was his last, at home anyway, his last home run at home with runners on base. And he's had one since on the road. It was in Pittsburgh, I believe. He had a 3-run homer in Pittsburgh in July. So one home run in 2 months with guys on base, why are you leading him off? It doesn't make any sense if that's all he does. So to me, I would move Schwarber down the lineup. And I understand you want to space the lefties. And to me, the strategy is this. If a pitcher has to come in and face 3 batters, and your team has lefties in the bullpen, force them to face 2 right-handers when you bring them in to come face Harper or Schwarber. So put 2 righties in front of Harper, put 2 righties behind Harper, and put Schwarber at the spot beyond that. So now you're really playing with the manager of the other team. So, all right, you want to bring in a lefty to face Harper? Great. That same guy's got to come in and face Real Muto and Castellanos too.
Yeah.
Or if you want to do it beforehand, he's got to face Hoskins and Bohm. Like, that's what I would do. I would consider Hoskins and Bohm at the top in one way or the other. 1-2, 1-2. I could play with that either way. I could also put Real Muto the way he's hitting. I could put Real Muto at the top and maybe put Hoskins in the 4 spot. But either way, I would put 2 righties above, 2 righties below Harper, then Schwarber in the 6th spot. Okay? And then don't bother the bottom of the lineup's been great. Right. Let the bottom of the lineup be the bottom of the lineup. Let Segura, Stott, turn that lineup over down there. And whoever's playing center field. Let them turn that lineup over.
The reason why I could make an argument for Stott hitting leadoff, but I think where you kind of get jammed up is when you get to the back end of the lineup. You would be very right-handed heavy if you don't use Stott 6, 7 or 8 even. Like, I think
right.
Like ideally when you think about what Bryson Stott is right now, you kind of just say, damn, he'd be a really good 7 hitter, and I think anything above that, you go like, yeah, could he handle leadoff? Probably, but if you do that, then this is the way I see it. You might go Stott, and then, like you said, your pick of Bohm or Hoskins 2, so these guys would be interchangeable. Harper 3. JT Realmuto, I would tell you, like, in a good team, is not a cleanup hitter, but I would also tell you that since Bryce Harper's been hurt, which is a span of, for him, 41 games played, he's hitting .329 with a .999 OPS. He's not only been one of the best hitting catchers in baseball, he's been one of the best hitters in baseball, period, now, for a 2-month stretch. So if you went Real Muto 4, Schwarber 5, and then, Castellanos, Bohm, or Hoskins, like whatever other guy that you're not using in that 2 spot, but then you run into, you're backing up Hoskins with Castellanos and then Segura and then Marsh when he comes back. And I don't know that you want to go 6, 7, 8, righty, righty, righty. So I think you need Bryson Stott down in that lower tier of the lineup. So while I don't have the perfect lineup and I understand the multiple viewpoints of this, I just don't think you can hit Bryson Stott leadoff for that very reason, because you're going to get caught too right-handed heavy in the second half of your lineup. And as you know, when you get into the postseason, those lefty-righty splits become even more important.
Right, and that's why I said I want to force managers to make a decision.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, I really do. I force Buck Showalter to sit there and go, all right, I got to bring in a bullpen arm here. Harper's coming up, and I want to bring in that lefty.
Because you can picture that key 7th inning at bat. Like, this is what this looks like. It's that key 7th inning at bat in the playoffs, and you've got Bryson Stott coming up. You've cleared the heart of the Phillies order now, right?
Yeah.
But now you're like, all right, here comes Bryson Stott. You almost expect the way that he's gone here now and how good he's been late in games to get a righty against Stott. You can almost say, like, I expect him to win that matchup, whereas you get a lefty against Stott and you go, that's a tough ask. And that's really what you're talking about in practice when you're trying to go through this construction.
Yeah. So that's why I would spread the lefties out in this lineup. I wouldn't go every other. They don't really have an every other option.
Right.
Because it's really only Schwarber, Harper, and Stott. Marsh, but we're not the 7. Whoever's playing center field is going to bat 9th no matter what. So you're really only talking to those first 3 guys. How do you spread them out most effectively for your lineup?
Yeah.
Because the rest of your lineup is right-handed, and that's why I said I would put 2 guys between Harper and Schwarber. Harper and Schwarber.
So I have a couple other things I want to touch on before, if you have one last thing. With Bryce Harper coming back, I think one of the conversations was going to be, if he just went down to Lehigh Valley and took his at-bats and he looked okay, I think we'd be saying, like, what Bryce Harper are we getting back right now? Now, I would not be totally stunned if Bryce Harper struggles a little bit when he gets back up here. Like, I guess I just wouldn't be surprised if it took him a week to kind of adjust and get going. But I think that he answered a lot of concerns about his ability to drive the baseball, about his ability to hit for power. I mean, not only does he yank one out to the pull side in his first at-bat back on Tuesday night, but then he also goes out opposite field. So I think that we see that the strength and the mobility is more or less there. Is he 100%? Probably not. But, like, should there be any concerns about Bryce Harper's ability to drive the baseball being limited? I don't think so. So I think that that's good. So I don't know that we need to necessarily have the what Bryce Harper conversation, like, are we getting? But I do think that there's some added benefits, and I suppose that this is somewhat obvious, but I think that one player that stands to benefit from his return, which is funny to say because he's going to play less, is Matt Vierling. I think that Matt Vierling has contributed a lot of different ways to the Phillies. The numbers aren't overwhelmingly impressive. But I think one of the things that we've seen with Matt Vierling over the last month or so especially is that he's kind of gotten a little bit overexposed. Like, we've seen a little bit too much Matt Vierling. And I think if you see him get back into a spot where he's being utilized in a more proper manner, I think you're going to get a more effective player out of him. So I think that's
I agree with
that's one benefit, one ancillary benefit to seeing Bryce Harper return here. It should make some of these guys that have been asked to pull more of the load be able to be utilized in more of a proper fashion.
Yeah, I agree with you a lot there, Bob, on that. I do think that that Vierling becomes better when he could be used in a specific role as opposed to being used as an everyday guy. So I definitely think that's a thing. So yes, I agree. I think that it helps it helps the entire lineup. I think the lineup, it helps the bench. It helps everywhere. It just really does. And that's, I'm excited to see it. I really am. He could start off slow, but I'm sitting here saying to myself, he could also come right back in and just be Bryce, right? And just kind of take off, and the Phillies is really, and that's what I think that the Phillies are hoping for, is that he comes in and just fires up this city and gets everybody pumped up for September baseball.
Right.
And I think he could do that. He's that kind of guy, and he embraces that role. I mean, you've talked about it, right? About him liking that hero role, right? I mean, he embraces it. So I think it's something that I'm really looking forward to. I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, and the other part of that, and certainly like Bryce Harper returning doesn't really solve the Phillies center field dynamics because Bryce Harper's not playing center field. He's not playing any field. You're not moving Nick Castellanos to center. You're not moving Kyle Schwarber to center. But it just, when you're talking about those corner outfield spots where Matt Vierling has had to then play a little bit additionally in the corner outfield spots, that's where I think a lot of that overexposure comes. So getting Marsh back, which it looks like he's on track to potentially come back here in the next few days, should eliminate that, where they get the right balance, they get the right mix with these outfielders. Like, that outfield starts to look very much, much more deep when you get his offense back and when you get Marsh back from a defensive standpoint. So I do think that the overall point being that Matt Vierling is probably going to benefit in September from getting all of these horses back and being utilized in more proper fashion. The other thing that I guess I've kind of started to wonder about, you see Nick Maton. Again, this is kind of plays along the lines of overexposure. I think if you played Nick Maton 6 times a week, you'd start to say, like, well, this is not an everyday player that can be ultra productive. But I think it needs to be noted that in the amount that he's played, and it just feels like this even dating back to last season, whenever Nick Maton's in the lineup, whenever Nick Maton has gotten a chance, he seems to make something good happen. Like, I don't know what his greatest attribute is as a baseball player, and I'm not telling you if he played 5-6 times a week, he'd hit 300 for this team, but man, what a useful part he's been, and I'd like to see him get an increased role in some capacity in September where, you come into October and you go, like, this is a guy I can feel good about in the right situation, in the right matchup. Because, man, what a nice job and what a nice boost he's given this team.
Yeah, he really has. He really has. And we were looking for that left-handed bat off the bench, Bob, for the playoffs. And And here we thought all along, the way things were going, that, it's going to be Derek Hall. I mean, look at how well he's hit. He got that power, and he still might be a guy that they call up to be on the bench. Down the obviously he'll be here for September, but he might still be a guy that they could turn to in the playoffs. But I do think Maton is probably ahead of him as far as the lefty off the bench.
Yeah.
Not because he's more dangerous to hit the home run, but because he could do so much more. He could play the infield. He could play the outfield. He could steal a base. He could get a hit, and he does have a little bit of that jerky home run power. Every once in a while. So I think that there's more value to what he brings to a bench than maybe what Derek Hall would bring. But these are good problems. These are good problems
to have. You have just two different situations here. You're like, if you're looking for the boom or bust, you go Hall. And then you don't have to worry about the ensuing flexibility or inflexibility of going to someone like Hall when you go to Maton. Like, he could go out there and probably take a couple innings in left field. He can play second base. Like, you have a little bit more. You don't have to be so worried about what are we doing defensively after this at bat when you go to him.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, good problems to have. Problems the Phillies have certainly not had in previous seasons. So,
yeah,
it really, it would be just to state the total obvious here. This team is about to become much, much better, much more dangerous, much more flexible, and deeper with the returns of Bryce Harper and Marsh here in the coming days. And it will be very, very interesting to watch this team in September as it kind of reloads, at least from an offensive and player position standpoint, even if Sir Anthony Dominguez and Zack Wheeler aren't here. I don't know about you, but I'm running out of time a little bit here, so if you want to jump on one last thing.
I got my one last thing.
Let's hit it.
You ready? Here. I'm going to read a slash line to you. I want you to tell me who it is. Okay? I'm serious. I think you'll be able to figure it out. 487, 524, 1103 with an OPS 1626, 7 home runs, 14 RBIs in 13 games.
This is a Philly.
No.
I have no idea. I'm not programmed to think like this right now.
Albert Pujols.
Yeah.
I mean, is this like one of the most unbelievable things that you think you're? And you talk about we're talking about devil magic, right? We're talking about the pixie dust. Here's a guy that was just wallowing on the bench of the Cardinals, just kind of like, let's bring him back for one last hurrah. And he's fueling, not just being part of. He's fueling their surge right now, and he's gotten himself to within 7 home runs of 700. And so my question for you, Bob, is: does he get it? Does he have 7 home runs in him over the last 5 weeks of the season, 6 weeks of the season?
It sure feels that way. I think that the Cardinals, you get him increased opportunities. You try to do it. I know he's on the record as saying that he won't come back next season to try to do it.
Right.
It is so interesting, though. I mean, 879 OPS this season, huh?
Think about that.
He has not had an OPS over 800 since 2012. I mean, you said earlier, talking about Edwin Diaz, you kind of go, man, what a year he's having. I just, listen, crazy. Good for him. Great story. It's bizarre. Some might credit Kyle Schwarber letting him win in the opening round of the Home Run Derby this year to help kind of kickstart that run. I mean, I don't know. What a crazy year he's had, though. But, I mean, for the guy to be slugging 529 after, here you go, in reverse order, his slugging percentages in previous seasons. 460, 372, 433, 395, 430, 411, 386. I mean, man, I don't know if he's just playing looser, knowing that this is the end, or more loosely, I should say, knowing this is the end. I have no idea. Maybe he's made some type of adjustment to compensate for something, but Jesus, what an unbelievable and out of nowhere surge for him and that whole Cardinals team, really. Yeah,
it's an interesting thing, man. Because look, I'd love to see Albert get to 700, just so we have a second 700 home run guy who we think did it cleanly.
Legit. It's funny. I don't think I'm going to catch anything for this, but you're a baseball guy, I consider myself to be a baseball guy by nature and all of that. I have a weird one for you. I don't care about Albert Pujols, and I never watched Albert Pujols play and say, like, wow, I got to watch this. Mm-hmm. I know that that's ridiculous, and I know that he is, if not one of the best hitters, maybe the top 3 best hitters of the last generation, certainly since the turn of the century.
Right.
I don't watch Albert Pujols play and get excited the way I have by other players.
Yeah, and you know why that is, though, Bob?
Because he's a first baseman?
Well, no, it's because he's been kind of nothing for a while.
For so long, like I just pointed to the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, but if you go back, like ask yourself 12 years ago how cool it was to watch Albert Pujols.
Yeah.
Play. All right, come in. You every time he came in, you're like, dude's going to hit a home run, and he did. Be like, son of a bitch, guy did it again. When he was having 3 MVPs in 5 years, and I think he came in second 4 times in the MVP voting. Dude was on fire in St. Louis. Same when he went to L.A., he was out of sight, out of mind, and he kind of became a shell of himself. Oh, is he really older than he is? Like, all those stories came out. Like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's just kind of...
And to be fair here, like, you're right on. I mean, his first 10 years in the major leagues, his lowest OPS in any single season was 955. In 8 of those 10 seasons, his OPS was over 1,000, and in that other season where he didn't hit it, it was 997. So for 10 years, you're talking about one of the most unbelievable offensive players in the sport and in the history of the sport, and I'm aware of all that.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But I think that's why you kind of say you don't care about him. It's taken him away. It's almost like this guy was great and he hung on for far too long.
And it's not like that his later years have been like he's been a useful player. It's not like he's been here for charity over the last 10 years. I mean, he's still been a fairly productive player. I mean, he did bottom out a little bit down there with the Angels. I mean, things got a little bit ugly at the end there, but I mean, he's still been okay.
But yeah, I mean, if you go 2013 to 2021, 252, 306, 438, 744 OPS.
It's still a good player.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. It's not an OPS plus 103. Right. I mean, it's just.
Well, I guess my point is he's not a guy that was simply on a team because of his name. I mean,
true.
You know what I mean? Like there was enough there to roster the guy, and now certainly the way he's finishing here has been awesome, and I'm rooting for him to the extent that I'd like to see him hit 700 home runs and. Great. I don't need to see him make I don't care about his success in the playoffs, and certainly if it came up against the Phillies, I'll admit to you, I would certainly be pulling for the Phillies if that's not obvious.
He's already won. He won his championships. It's all right. It's good.
But a good finish, a good final chapter for Albert Pujols, no less. So Phillies have the return of Bryce Harper on tap here this weekend against the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are back on a more normal basis moving forward here, so I would expect that you and I will both talk on Monday after this series. Phillies will head out west, Arizona, San Francisco, and we shall see what happens here. But the Phillies are in great position as we record here and wrap up today. And so if you don't have anything else, just give me a nod here as I hit the finish button. Yeah, thumbs up. All right, very good. So thanks for listening to Crust Up. For Anthony Sanfilippo, I'm Bob Wankel, and we will talk to everybody soon.